Parenting is hard. Few of us feel up to the task. The world is shifting, quickly and dramatically. All of us feel the changes affecting our families. The stress and pressure can be intense. We are here to help sort the good and the bad, provide insight, and bring hope. Welcome to Brilliantly Brave Parenting. We're so glad you stopped by.
Hi, and welcome to Brilliantly Brave Parenting. I am your co-host, Pastor Brad Matthias, along with my ornery sidekick.
Hi, Brad. How are you?
Ornery is spelled R-O-B-E-R-T.
Okay, whatever. The reason he's saying that is that I asked him to stop his introduction about 2 or 3 times prior to that because you sounded weird, and so
Says the man with a sinus infection.
that's okay. Yeah. Our audience will excuse it, but that's why I'm on
So,
it. It's not.
I'll tell you why
trying
he's
to
being so
protect you.
rude. If you're watching on YouTube, you can't see this on the SoundCloud, but I brought my own icon to the table. It is going to be a mystery. People are going to have to watch the show to see what I just put on the table, but it is a antagonist to Robert. It's intentionally designed to irritate and annoy him.
Here's the thing I know about Mac users is no anti-Mac thing, no other icon is actually a threat. People that try to take down Apple or Mac, they think that, oh, well, this will get them mad and whatever, but it's just irrelevant. So
I don't even know what
you
you're
can
talking
leave
about.
it there on the table.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Okay.
All right. So it is season 5. We're marching through our podcast season. And we have been working through some gnarly weather. It's it's winter.
In Tennessee, we're recording this in the middle of November, and there's supposed to be snow, which just doesn't happen.
It does not happen. No. So a lot of shock, a lot of fear. Kroger will be empty by 5.
This is true. Tennessee does not.
Because there's a threat of a 1/10 of an inch of something.
Exactly.
White, which... I used to make fun of that. I come from, near Chicago. I grew up in the Midwest and where it really snows and it's really cold, which it's not here. But the thing about Tennessee that I've discovered in 20 years is that everything's a hill and no one has a plow.
This is true.
So it is literally a sledding festival on the highway. Yeah, it gets pretty exciting out there.
You can fly through roads in Colorado, through the Rockies, and it's snowing.
They have sand and gravel and snow plows.
You're going 70 miles an hour and not a problem. Here, you go like 23 miles an hour and you're in danger of losing your life.
Yeah, and there's a funny thing that happens in Tennessee. When they see snow, people do the exact opposite of what you're supposed to do. They smash on their brake.
Yeah, exactly.
And now you have a missile. It's not a car anymore or an SUV. No. Now it is an out-of-control rocket coming at you. So the danger in Tennessee isn't the roads. It's the people driving on the roads.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, for some of our listeners who live in sunny climes and never have to deal with this, please don't tell us. For the rest of us who live in this, podcasting, living in the world of weather and variables is a lot like parenting. There's a lot of changes that come. Did you like that segue?
Did you just try to do a segue?
I did. Yeah. Did you like it?
It's okay.
All right. Well, the weather and parenting, to me, have similarities. You get unexpected developments.
This is true.
And it's not always sunny. How's that?
The forecast is very unreliable.
Very unreliable.
Yeah.
Yes. And you never know exactly when you're going to hit a slick spot.
This is true.
I've done some banana peel falls in my time, and that's true in my parenting as well as my physical activities.
Likewise, but typically when that happens, you don't do that again. You learn and you keep going.
Yeah, you notice there's a slick spot there.
Exactly. You're like,
the teenage years were just one ice storm after another.
That's very true.
But, I think as we sort of walk through parenting, we have opportunities to talk with a lot of different guests. We have people who've experienced life just as the traditional family experience. We've had people who've experienced life within the church, some people who've been outside of the church. And then there's people who just are sort of late to the story of life. And like me, I didn't become a believer until my mid-30s. So I think there's all kinds of different contexts. And so one of the things we take real effort on this show is to include as many different perspectives and viewpoints as possible to the parenting equation.
As long as it's all authentic.
Yes. No makeups, no faking. So we want authentic stories of hope and encouragement. And today we have a guest that we know because we've worked with her within the iShine Bema world. Her name is Melanie Medina, and she's here from Sherman, Texas.
That's correct. Lake Texoma. technically Denison, but yeah, Sherman.
There you go.
Sorry.
We're glad that you're
So, Lake Texoma. Tell us about Lake Texoma, because I went there once on a youth retreat with the church system there, Dwayne Sheriff Ministries.
Yes. It's a beautiful lake. It's a man-made lake. It's actually a lake that has been formed by damming up the Red River, which forms the border between Oklahoma and Texas. So if you've never been to a place that has a man-made lake, then you're really missing it. In fact, at one point in time, Lake Texoma itself was actually the largest man-made lake on the planet.
Really?
It was.
Really?
Uh-huh.
Huh.
Yep, it sure was. And now it's just like the destination. We have something like 6 million visitors a year. It's a pretty ridiculous number.
6 million?
Yes, to the lake. To the lake.
I had no idea.
Yeah, it's huge. Lots of camping on both sides of the lake. The Texas side has a lot of state park land on it. But the Oklahoma side has some beautiful beaches, absolutely gorgeous beaches as far as that goes. The water, you can't see to the bottom. Don't think you're going to come there and snorkel. But
Okay, I have a funny story. This will tie you into this. You remember when we went on an iShine tour?
Yep.
And we stayed at Lake Texoma in one of those youth cabin things for a couple nights. Yeah,
right?
Camp Victory.
Yeah.
And I had this really paranoid mom who was with her daughter.
I remember well.
And she was convinced there were cougars in the area. And I told her, there's no way. They don't have cougars in this part. You know, like it's not going to happen. Well, guess what? It was a cougar. Like a real live cougar. It killed like a cow or a horse the day before. And so I remember like Texoma really well because I was so humbled. Like I had to go to her and say, I am so sorry. I really wasn't lying to you. I didn't believe there were cougars here.
Which is another great segue into what we're talking about today. And that is that you just don't know what you're going to get. And sometimes all the preparation in the world and everything you think as a parent, you can outline doesn't necessarily apply.
Yeah, like thinking this will never happen to me.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So, Melanie, you have been we've been talking before the show, and you shared with us that you've already written an ebook called The Fitted Sheet Dillema, and you're working on a series of books called Behold Her Life, The Solo Mom. So, we wanted to give you just a little time to kind of tell your story. Tell us how you got here and what led you to get into ministry to single moms.
All right. I did become a solo mom when my kids were really young. Grace was actually 2 weeks old when I found myself in a separation. And so I mean, they were really little. In fact, they were so little that it's actually a blessing in some ways that they don't remember that period of time. They don't have, recall of, trauma of the transition or anything like that. But when I became a solo mom, I just was really seeking, how do I do this? What do I do? And even hid the fact that I was separated from family for a long time because I was so embarrassed and so ashamed. And I actually had a little bit of hope that it could be restored. But then when it wasn't, there was that stark realization of, okay, I'm going to have to do this. And I see a lot of people I know doing this, but, they're getting babysitters and they're heading to the bars, or they're getting babysitters and they're immediately dating. And I just didn't feel like that was the right thing to do. In fact, I felt the Lord spoke to my heart and told me that my home was not going to look like the other solo parent homes. And I'm very thankful that I had people in my life like my Nana who were there to urge me on to good things. One of those good things initially didn't feel like such a good thing. We changed churches. I had gone to a revival of sorts, Jubilee, at Victory Life Church in Durant, and realized that there was so much more to the love of God, and it goes into how you love people. And the people of that church just scooped up my kids and me, who felt like we didn't even know where we belonged anymore, and loved us and gave us this home. But even still, there was really nobody I could reach for. No one who had been in my season of life, or who was currently in my season of life for many years. I would even have people come up to me and say, "Oh, I didn't know you were divorced. Oh, I'm so sorry." And that's like, in my book, I talk about things to not say. There's like, just kind of a fun page in it about what not to say to a single parent. And, the I'm so sorry part is one of those things, because, sometimes it turns from bitter to sweet, because, the Lord is redeeming those moments. And I started looking for those redeeming moments with God in my parenting, which, oh boy, the parenting little kids was hard. Robert knows. But I would look for those moments and I would watch myself think I was on a really good track. And then it was like I just fell off completely, that there was no, I wasn't on the rails anymore at all. And the Lord would redeem me from that, and he'd bring people to encourage me. But there wasn't someone, or there wasn't a tool, there weren't any books back then. If they were kind of dated and skewed toward, this is what you've decided, and now you're kind of on your own. So just, it's just you and God. And then I had other people tell me I shouldn't remarry and I shouldn't date. So I was 16 years career solo mom.
Wow. So you went 16 years as a single parent of 3 kids.
Yes.
In the church, trying to navigate sort of the scripture, the doctrine, the theology of the Bible with
and
the divorce
of the people.
Yes.
Yeah. So you've got, and I think most listeners would appreciate the nuance that you have old school sort of approaches to that, and then you have more of a modern twist of it. So you had to work through all that for yourself. And I know at some point that got worked out because you're remarried.
I am. Praise God.
Yeah. So I think for the listener, there may be quite a few moms who find themselves either at the edge of a divorce, like there's a separation that started, or they sort of sense it's coming. And they're ashamed and afraid, and they don't want to admit either to themselves or to anyone else that this is a possibility. What do you say to a mom like that?
I just say our Lord is holding you. He holds us and loves us regardless of where we are and what stage of life we're in, and also care for yourself, nourish that relationship with the Lord, because that's where the filling occurs. And once you're full, don't stop. Keep going, because out of the overflow is how you're going to love your kids. That's how you're going to help them transition into and through not just the time that may be happening now, but that time when they get teased at school, or that time when they come to the realization that they don't have a dad to go to the daddy-daughter dance with, or maybe it's, the mom who is absent. There are those moments in time when the Lord ordained this design of a home, and it's a mother and a father, and when one of those is absent, it does cause for room for the world to come in and start telling you how to do that. So I would say, don't listen to the world at any junction, and stay as close to the Lord and in the Word constantly as you can. There is someone, and you pray for that person. I did. I prayed for that person to come into my life and come alongside me as Melanie, maybe not me as Melanie as a parent, but just me as Melanie, to that I could learn from. And for that person for me was Sue Sheriff and Nancy Gentry. There were 2 as one in the ministry, and I learned from their parenting styles. I learned from their wife skills. I learned from just how they were walking as a daughter of the King, how I wanted to walk, and it was biblical. So it wasn't like this elusive thing. How do I get to be that? I just wanted to pick up that character from the Lord, so that my kids would have something good to model, honestly. And I still failed. I still failed miserably at times.
No, I think you did a remarkable job. And we've had the privilege of kind of walking with you. We've known you for a decade now.
Yeah.
And just have loved what you've done with your girls and your kids, just loving them well and being a good example. I think the thing that I'm hearing is not only do you have to kind of seek out those relationships, but for those parents that are not single parents, don't alienate those that are single parents. I mean, and we talked a little bit about this before we got into the show, is the importance of the relationships, and we stop getting invited to certain things, and we stop. So it took someone like Sue to reach out to you and to continue to speak into your life, even though it doesn't look just like her life. Like, in other words, it's not a nuclear family. You are a single mom. You still found a godly role model and principles to walk through. And so I think that's encouraging to people that are still married. Find those single parents and just invest in their lives. It doesn't mean you need to go and fix them. It just means walk with them, right?
Right. And like you and I were talking before the podcast, I know that it's an awkward thing for a lot of people to reach out to someone who's single. I mean, as even I remember women even saying, well, I would invite you over, but my husband's there.
Right.
And like I'm allergic to men or something.
It's the but. Like, I would do this, but.
Exactly. And that it's that thing. And it is awkward. A lot of times people don't know what to say, even with divorce rates as high as they are now, and the single parenting, it's everywhere. I meet a ton of single parents now. In fact, I thought when I remarried that I thought, oh, I've been delivered.
Right.
I've got a husband now. I'm not alone. I'm not by myself. And that's not at all what that looks like. That's not the truth at all. In fact, I'm blessed to be able to walk with other solo moms who are raising teenagers right now. They come to our home. My daughters help mentor their girls, and I talk with them and listen to them. That's the biggest part.
Yeah.
And if you have the opportunity to visit with a solo mom, I mean, what I wish that someone had done for me, I wish someone had said, "Hey, Melanie, I just want to take you to lunch, just you and me." Because we so often, parents, whether we're married or not, are attached at the hip with our kids.
Yeah.
And I did feel like I needed to do that because I have one parent. They need that one parent. I was very adamant about that. But that soul pastoring, that soul shepherding that I needed as a solo mom, I didn't get that. I would have loved to just be invited to go somewhere, with my kids a little more often. But if someone had made the effort to say, I'm getting a sitter, let's share the sitter, and you and I go have a meal. My husband's out of town, or my husband's watching football, or my husband's at life group. Come over. Let's let's do this thing.
Or my husband wants to be with me, but I'm choosing to
even that. Yeah.
Like, you need to realize what an impact you can have on people's lives if you just reach out. And I think that's it's a serious reminder, and it doesn't take that much for someone to do that, but it means so much.
The world.
To the solo parent.
The world. It means so much. And then even as the kids get a little older, I find myself now, they're 28, 20, almost 24 and 21. And one of them, the youngest, just got married. And that's such a blessing. Madison, my middle daughter, is not married. Cody, the oldest, is married. And every now and then they'll come to you and say, "Hey, what's your take on this? How do you feel about this? Or what do you think I should do?" And I'm at that point, even in the last 24 hours of, what do I do? How much of a parent am I now? And so even as my kids have grown up, I've grown up. So, now I have a husband, and he and I get together and talk about things. But previously, I had the reins. Me and God, is me and the Lord against the world, with these kids. And even relinquishing that, some of that to my husband was a big step too. There are just so many different stages. You were talking about the weather looking like parenting. I mean, what do you do when the car breaks down completely? I mean, that's what it feels like sometimes when you're a solo mom. You can't even get it to start. To get that thing to turn over. And feeling helpless or alone, those are all very real things. And it can bleed over into the parenting. And I think that's why it's so key for us to have that abiding relationship with the Lord.
As I'm listening to you, Melanie, one of the things that keeps sort of bouncing around inside of my mind as a pastor is I see it's a significant temptation for single moms coming out of a marriage with kids to immediately seek another relationship.
Of course, yeah.
There's this fear of being alone, and there's a vulnerability that comes with being a single mom that I'm never going to fully appreciate, but I recognize it.
Right.
I see it, and I see it driving actions. I see desperation in a lot of these stories. You went 16 years on your own.
Yeah, I had a lot of first dates.
Okay. So, yeah, I can only imagine. But I could also see the hand of God in that.
Amen.
Because I can imagine, and I believe, and I haven't actually talked to you about this, so I'm making an assumption. I believe that God probably reoriented your identity
around
Him and not a man.
Absolutely.
Can you talk about that a little bit? Because I think some single moms out there might need to be encouraged to hang in there.
Well, it wasn't easy. I don't recommend single parenting. It is not the way to go. But if you do find yourself in that situation, partnering with the Lord, first getting to know him. That I can remember someone saying, "Oh, I've got this guy I want to set you up with." And at first I thought, "Oh, like even that person that wanted to set me up with someone," initially I was like, okay, so I'm not old. I've got 3 kids. I'm a divorcee, and they still think I'm eligible for a date. This is so cool. Okay, well, who is it? And they start telling me a little bit about this person, whoever it is. I have one person in mind, and I thought, that doesn't look like what I want. It looks like what I had. And I wanted to make sure that what I did moving forward resembled something.
That you learned.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay.
Resembled something. I didn't want to go in the other ditch, but I wanted it to resemble something that would be something I was, proud to bring home this, whoever this gentleman was, or that I wouldn't mind having in front of my kids, and that would be the way to go. It needed to glorify God. The relationship would have to. And in order for the relationship to glorify God, I would have to be glorifying God, and the other person would have to be glorifying God. Mm-hmm. And many times I found it where I wasn't glorifying God as much as the guy was. I mean, I think that you're right. The Lord's hand was on that. And I remember one night in particular where I felt like I turned that corner. I was sad. I was sad to be alone, and some friends of mine were getting married, and I didn't go to the wedding. I didn't do weddings anymore.
Yeah.
And I used the excuses I couldn't find a babysitter. I'll never forget that. But I didn't look for one, because I wasn't going. And I was on the couch. The kids were already asleep. I was on the couch by myself, and I was just crying, asking God, am I going to be alone parenting these 3 kids forever? And it was like I could feel his arms around me, and he said, "You're not alone. I am right here with you." Mm-hmm. And I remembered the promises that he's lined out for us in his word about how he provides, and how he loves, and how he redeems. And I had all this, it was like, wow, he did all of those things. And here I am worried about whether or not I'm going to have another date, and realized that my mission, my purpose for that season of life was to raise those kids so they would know him at an early age, so that they would serve him just with total abandon, and so they could walk like him, not like me. And because I don't want anybody walking like I walked. It always still makes me nervous when people are like, I just want to do like, no, don't do like me. Don't do that. Let's be like Christ. And but that being alone, it is a very real thing. But I urge people to have good, strong friendships. Find a small group or a home church or something like that if you don't feel like you can. I remember the days of not feeling like I could walk into the church I grew up in. Mm. And it was shame, and it was a lie from the enemy. Those were things that were in my heart that I needed to work out. But, committing myself to the Lord, I also had tremendous accountability partners in that. I asked for it. I found people and said, I'm not going to date. Don't let me date. If I say I'm going to date, you should just go with me.
It's so important having those kind of boundaries. I mean, one of my co-hosts on the podcast that I do for single parents, she always says that one of the boundaries that she set for herself is, as soon as the kids went to bed, she was not allowed to get on social media. She wouldn't allow herself to go online at all. Yeah. Because that becomes kind of, and so it's important to establish those kinds of lines in the sand, mm-hmm. And it's not like a debatable, it's not like I'm going to really struggle with going on Match.com or Facebook or whatever. You just maybe during the day when there are other things occupying my time, but when I'm just sitting in the place of aloneness, mm-hmm. kids are in bed, that is not the time to open yourself up to the Amsterdam of the internet, it's dangerous. So I think having those boundaries are super important, accountability, as you called it. And I love what you said about the alone part. I think one of the things that I learned that totally resonate with you is the idea of, well, when Jesus recharged, he didn't like go off with his disciples and say, let's go rest or whatever. He went alone to be with his Father. And you can look at this time of being solo as being just completely abandoned. And some aspects of that could be true, or you could look at this as an opportunity to be exclusive with your Father.
So good.
Just as Jesus decided to, whether it was the Garden of Gethsemane or whether it was the desert or whether it was the other side of the Sea of Galilee, he chose to go it alone. And so it's how you frame that, I think, that really determines the outcome of your time alone, right?
Let me dive in here because I think that's 100% accurate, but there's another part to that. I don't believe a single mom can wait 16 years without the practical support of a church.
Absolutely.
You can't feel safe in providing for those children and taking care of their needs. You can't grow in your identity and intimacy with Christ if there's not a safe environment.
There has to be community
to do
Absolutely.
that. And so I think that as I'm listening to your story, I know Pastor Dwayne Sheriff and his wife, and I know the ministry that he's a part of and the churches he's planted there. They are very hands-on. I mean, they have a serious food pantry there.
Absolutely.
They get into the weeds, literally. They're putting roofs on houses and they're taking care of the needs of these single moms. So my thought as I'm listening to that is there needs to be space for healing. There needs to be this growth, but it has to be physically supplemented by the local church.
Absolutely. And I think that's the point, is that you walk life with community.
Absolutely.
But you recharge in your intimacy with our Father.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I came to know, but you have to have community.
Yeah, so that's where the attack seems to be. I'm just listening. So if I'm wrong, call me out. I won't be offended. But the attack then would be for the devil or the enemy to separate you from community of faith.
Yes, absolutely.
Because that's where you become vulnerable to him.
Yes, exactly. Thankfully, at Victory Life Church, where the children and I landed, it was not just a soft place; it was the safe place. And they did not immediately. I mean, I was so hesitant to tell them that I was a solo parent because in previous circles, it disqualified me from serving.
Yeah. Lots of churches still.
Sure.
Yeah.
And I totally get that because healing needs to occur. And but not all healing comes with a wedding ring.
Yeah, right.
Thankfully, the people in Victory were, they wanted to walk with me. They weren't afraid of me. There was no fear of being hands-on and hugging me and loving me and hugging my kids and loving them. In fact, I went in to pick up my kids from children's church about 10 minutes early because all right, here it is. I was tired of fighting the traffic in the parking lot. I wanted to get out before everybody else. And so I slipped out because I didn't need the altar call. I was saved. And I went and got the kids. And I walked in the door of the children's chapel area, which was a multipurpose room at the time. The lights were down. Like they were dimmed and there were lights on the stage. And I didn't see anybody. I thought I had the wrong room. And this woman comes around the corner. Her name is Kathy. And she's like, "Hey, can I help you?" And I said, "I was just going to get my kids." And all of a sudden, I see I get a little closer to the chairs, little tiny fingertips reaching for the Lord. They were on their knees in worship. And I thought, oh, I'm interrupting. But we just have a few more minutes left. Why are they doing this now? But they were lingering in the Holy Spirit. These children were lingering in the Holy Spirit. And Kathy goes, "Well, come here. I need your help." And do you know, from that day forward, I was serving in children's ministry. Of course, there were, all the paperworks and all those things that you had to put in place. But I watched my kids. I sat in children's church and learned for the very first time about love, God's love. I learned for the first time about family. I learned for the first time that I could be alongside my kids. I didn't have to parent from way over here and send them places. I could be there with them, alongside them. God, that's a gift. And whether you're married or not, you can parent that way. We don't always have that call on our lives or that grace to operate in. But that was, for me, that was huge to have that community there. They didn't care if I was divorced. They didn't care at all. What they saw was someone who loved her kids.
Mm-hmm.
And I grew in that ministry and pastored for a long time with Nancy in children's ministry. And
I think there's something so beautiful in that. And, it's we know people within the Dwayne Sheriff Ministries, one of our dear friends, and you work with him, Tom Johnson. I'll never forget we were driving somewhere from one of our shows back to Sherman, and we were talking about divorce, and we were talking about that. And he was talking about how, I'm going to paraphrase, so I hope he forgives me if he hears this, but something along the lines of, I kind of don't trust people that don't walk with a limp. And I thought that was beautiful, because I that's exactly, if you haven't been broken, if you haven't established yourself as someone that is in need, it's then that person feels so much more self-reliant. And I love when a church like Dwayne Sheriff, like Victory, and embrace people that walk with a limp, realizing that it's not necessarily, it is a sign of our humanity and our need and dependency for God. And so I think that's a beautiful story about the kid. And it so warms my heart when I hear about ministries that go outside of the boundaries of what is safe for them, because they recognize the strength and weakness.
Mm-hmm. There were times when I think I still heard the enemy's lies in my ear, like, you don't have a husband, you're not qualified for this, or you just had a really bad morning with your kids, like really, really bad morning, like the enemy rode to church on top of my car. How can you go in here and then minister to these kids? Seriously, I don't think that there's anything that will disqualify us like that unless we allow it to happen. And so many times I would feel like, oh, what am I doing? Who am I to be parenting these kids? And I have to have that reminder of the Lord did place them in our charge.
Yes.
And there must be some part of me he can trust, or he wouldn't have done that much. And so I've got to find that and nurture it and grow it and operate in that. And still, right along the way, just failing miserably. Thankfully, I learned quickly to repent to my kids. I remember one instance when we had been really talking pretty, straightforward about gossiping about people. And as, days would have it, I was in the car a lot, had the kids in the back seat, the phone rang, I answered the phone, and I was talking about someone. And I got off the phone, and from the back seat, I hear little Madison's 10-year-old voice go, "Mommy, that wasn't very nice to be talking about her like that." And I exhaled, and
I don't know what she's talking about.
That's never happened.
You don't never had to.
No,
okay.
I've never ever done
Blown
that
it in front of our kids.
No. I got a straight A in parenting. Yeah, so I just want to step in again as the pastor and speak to first of all, I got a tremendous amount of respect for both of you, Robert and Melanie. This is not easy to parent children by yourself, whether you're a man or a woman, and you're struggling to only you only have one half of that skill set, and you're trying to fill in that blank. And one of the most beautiful things that I hear in both of your stories is how the local church stepped into some of those roles that you couldn't fill.
Yeah.
And I'm a pastor, so I'm a little biased. I'm going to champion the local church.
Absolutely.
Because I believe that so many lives that are wounded become disasters when they separate from their local church and don't come back.
Right.
When they believe some of the lies about how a church is responding. And some churches just don't respond well.
Or they're not
so go to another one.
Yeah.
But find a place where people love you like Jesus does. And then hang to that as a lifeline. Because my sense is there are so many people who are afraid to go back to the church who are single parents. And that's what I love about Solo Parent Society, the ministry that you've launched, Robert. And I love the fact that you're writing books for moms, because you guys can speak to that in a way that I can't.
Well, here's the thing. I know, because I live in this world right now in the ministry, but according to Pew Research, 67% of single parents don't go to church. And the number 1 and 2 reason are they feel judged and like they don't belong. That's an easy fix for a church. You know what I mean? Like that's not rocket science, to just start embracing single parents and to not look down on them and not to condemn them, but to walk with them. The encouraging thing is that churches can take that leap, and some do. And, I'm convinced that it's not because, it's not because churches don't care.
Right.
It's just they don't know where to start. And so my point
Yeah,
in
there's
that
some
is
awkward stuff
there's
there.
awkward. And so to just address the two things that keep most single parents away from church is judging and making them feel like they don't belong. So it means hugging them, loving on them, like getting on their level, doing life with them. And that's what you found with Victory. It's what I have found with churches, and it's what, we want to encourage people both on this podcast and the other things that we're doing is like, be deliberate about reaching out to single parents because it's over a third of our population.
I was just listening and I wrote down several things on my little sheet because I'm learning. You said these are things you should never say to a single parent. I'm so sorry, guilty. Like I've obviously put my foot in it enough times that I needed to hear that, number one. And number two, like this whole idea of engaging with the parent alone. I think that's a distinction that a lot of people don't know is important.
It is
so
important.
You guys sharing this is a big deal. Like we need to know these things.
I think that that self-care and that relationship with God, that is apart from parenting is the thing that allowed me and actually enabled me probably to be a better parent, making sure that, if mama ain't happy, ain't nobody happy. That saying.
I've heard of it. Yeah.
Happy wife, happy life. You guys get that one too. But where's the one about the solo parent? I mean, if I don't have Melanie time, and Melanie time might look like me grabbing a cup of coffee at CJ's and walking down Main Street in Denison, Texas, and roaming through window shopping, and then going back to my car and sitting for just a minute, just breathing in life without 5 people in my ear. Because, then driving back home, I feel recharged. I've been away from home for a week now. I mean, I go home today, but just being away from my family, my husband, my kids, and now my grandboy, I just think, wow, I missed a lot of stuff. And while I was gone, and I really am missing them now. And so even just for the mom that has 2 or 3 kids who are still in school, if you can take an hour and a half, maybe while the kids are doing something or however you get away, and just do that thing that gives you your time, glorify the Lord. Listening to 80s music, that's okay. You can be glorifying to the Lord walking through an antique store. I can definitely glorify the Lord drinking me some coffee. But there's, just getting that time so that, I have that release and I go home and I'm not wound up. I'm not tight. I can be there for my kids better. Staying in the Word is just so key for me. It is.
Wow, I can tell there's a lot of information and experience that you could be sharing, and we just don't have the time today to go into all of it. But where would someone go to find your books and more about you?
They can go to beholdherlife.com, and they can find me at that handle on every form of social media. They actually I have a free ebook. If they go on and subscribe to Behold Her Life, they'll get a download of the Fitted Sheet Dillema.
Oh, very good. Very good. Well, thank you very much for taking the time to be a part of this podcast. And I know, Robert, you probably have some closing thoughts here, but I'm grateful to have her here.
I am too. And like we said, I mean, we've known you for a long time, and it's just such an honor to I'm not going to say be on the other side, but to be a little further down the road and to look back, to reflect on God's faithfulness to us, and to proclaim that to other people. And say, God is faithful. He is with you, and you're just a constant reminder of that to me. And during my solo days, you and your kids were that to me. And so I'm grateful for you and your whole family, and glad that this worked out, that you could be with us today. So thank you.
Be encouraged, parents. You are not alone. In Paul's letter to his son in the faith, Timothy, he writes, "But I am not ashamed, for I know whom I have believed, and I am convinced that he is able to guard until that day what has been entrusted to me." Brilliantly Brave Parenting wants to be an encouragement and support that parents can rely on. Would you consider liking us and sharing us with a friend? As a part of the Tween Gospel Alliance, we are a nonprofit organization dependent on the support of friends like you. Thanks for stopping by. We'll be right here next week.
Well, we're very excited to announce a partnership with the guys that we know from Boise, Idaho, Robert.
Yes, we are. New release today. They're fantastic. Very, very relevant for what's going on. If you want to discover new music in the Christian realm, that's kind of the only place to go.
Yeah, and not only do they have amazing music and amazing reviews and just a lot of information about Christian artists, but they are creating with us a brand new devotional product. Call it IRL Resources.
Do you know what that stands for, Brad?
I found out.
You did? What does it stand for?
It stands for In Real Life.
That's exactly right, Brad. Very good. In real life, because a lot of times we have these standard devotionals that we see, and we thought that it would be kind of cool to use their expertise in Christian music, couple that with actual scriptural and devotional thought that digs you deeper, not only into the song, but incorporates it into real life. And so it's a very vibrant and very awesome resource for families and for pastors.
Yeah, and so if you have a preteen or a teen in your home and you're looking for a new devotional to do weekly, we have a digital subscription online at IRLresources.com. It's very inexpensive. The first study is free to check it out. There's nothing to lose. You should go there and see what's the latest thing in Christian devotional.
Absolutely. You won't regret it.
What our kids believe is going to define them for a lifetime. According to George Barna, by the age of 13, what a kid believes is what he'll die believing. For parents and for pastors, that's a frightening experience, especially if you've got an 11 or 12-year-old. At the I Shine Ministries headquarters, this became a huge priority in the last year. We partnered with the Tween Gospel Alliance to bring you a brand new resource known as the Shock and Awe Study Guide. And I'm here with one of the co-founders of this entire program, Robert Beeson. Can you tell us, what is the Shock and Awe Study Guide?
It is awesome. More than that? Yeah. Okay. The Shock and Awe Study Guide is a super cool thing that either a parent can do with their kid, or a youth pastor can do with their students, or a children's pastor can do with their students. And here's the cool thing about it. It is apologetics for kids. So it's the really huge evidence and thoughts of apologetics wrapped in a way that is really tangible and simple for kids to understand, answering 4 primary questions. And they are, what if there's a God? What if the Bible is true? What if Jesus is who he said he was? And what if I'm part of that plan? And we believe if you can answer those 4 questions and you are drawn through evidence proving those 4 questions, that really it's gonna establish a pretty unshakable foundation of faith.
That sounds very helpful, especially if you're a parent or pastor and you're concerned about the condition of your child's faith, what they believe, what the voices of culture are telling them. If that's you and you're interested, go to ishinelive.com and check out in our web store the Shock and Awe Study Guide. It has a digital cloud video base, so it's 4 studies in a small paperback volume for $9, and it has 4 videos that go with 4 studies. It can be done in a weekend, it can be done over a month, or it can be done bi-monthly, however you need it. It is a fantastic resource that I have used as a pastor in my own home church, and I have been impressed. So check it out.
Check it out.